Do we have too much government?
We need to put people ahead of corporate profits.
This system is so lopsided. This threat is a real threat to democracy.
And I think that's really important. That's something we haven't been doing in this country for a long time.
Where do you start? What do you do? How do you do it?
Access to Democracy is sponsored by Thomson Reuters, providing legal professionals with the intelligence, technology, and human expertise they need to find trusted answers. Products include Westlaw, Practical Law, and Firm Central legal practice management software for small law firms. Thomson Reuters, the answer company. Online at thomsonreuters.com. Access to Democracy is made possible in part by a donation from Firefly Credit Union. Firefly is the new name of U.S. Federal Credit Union, which has proudly served the financial needs of the Greater Twin Cities community since 1925. At Firefly, we guide our members forward and give them the power to chase dreams by delivering the financial solutions they need to get ahead. From checking accounts to mortgages, we'll light the way. We are Firefly Credit Union, and this is Life Illuminated. And Dr. Charles Crutchfield of award-winning Crutchfield Dermatology in Eagan, acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians. A Minnesota native who trained at the Mayo Clinic, Dr. Crutchfield personally treats all patients and states that experience counts and quality matters. Crutchfield Dermatology. Look good, feel great, with beautiful skin.
Welcome to Access to Democracy. I'm Bill Raker, President and CEO of Firefly Credit Union and the guest host for this session. We're pleased to welcome as our guest Mark Cummins, who's President and CEO of Minnesota Credit Union Network. Welcome to Access to Democracy, Mark.
Thank you, Bill. It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate it.
We're delighted that you can be with us today to talk about credit unions in Minnesota and the Credit Union Network. But before we get into that, maybe share a little bit of your history and how you got involved in credit unions and why you got involved.
Sure.
And how you got to Minnesota.
Well, it's my pleasure. We usually, we always start with kind of our bona fides, but I'd like to maybe back up just a step. And I'm a family man, I think primarily, happily, fortunately married for almost 34 years now, and 4 kids. And as kids turn into great adults, your family expands a little more, and with in-laws and 7 kids, a few grandkids here and there. So it's been great. From a professional perspective, I've been in the financial services industry since graduation of college. Proud graduate of the University of Colorado. Go Buffs! Try to get that plug in every once in a while.
Yeah.
But after graduation, then I started into commercial banking and was there for a number of years and worked through different divisions in the bank. It was about over my time frame there, it was about a $2 billion asset institution, 22 different banks. It was a unit banking state if you're into that sort of thing with a holding company ownership to that. And the banking area was evolving into more of what you see today in banks with a branching network. And so there's going to be consolidation on the operational side, which is the area that I worked in at my unit bank. And I had actually transferred from the bank to our data processing subsidiary that we had that did all the processing for the banks, because both I saw the consolidation for efficiencies that was going to be happening on the operational side, but also that the next place to be was in the technology aspect of that. And so I went to work for the data processing subsidiary and learned an important lesson, and that was that I absolutely hated it. I just wasn't, it wasn't my forte, and I really missed the daily interactions with the customers. My customers now were what had been my peers before, and it was just a different feeling, a different atmosphere, and it wasn't comfortable for me and not what I wanted to do. So in those days, if you're looking for a different opportunity, you look at the want ads in the newspaper. And I basically read my resume in the newspaper want ad for at what was that time Pueblo Teachers Credit Union in Colorado, and to work at the credit union as what would be basically an executive vice presidential role in charge of everything outside of operations and accounting, which is what I had been doing before in the banking world. So it was a great opportunity for me. It was a great fit and a wonderful introduction into a different aspect of financial services. That
Started your credit union career.
It absolutely did. It absolutely did. And was young with a young family, and it accentuated for me the differences of a number of aspects from internal to external aspects of the business that were very, very different than how things were done in the commercial loan or commercial banking side. Nothing wrong with the approach and things that are done in banking. It's just it's a different aspect about a very similar business.
Tell us, that's interesting how you got into the credit union world, and we appreciate the fact that you are here. Tell us some of the fundamental differences between banks and credit unions now that you've had banking experience and credit union experience. So what's the difference between the two, and why is it important to understand that difference?
Sure, and I'm going to say it from probably from like an inside-out perspective from that, because I've been on the inside in both instances, and the commercial banking system is a profit-driven model, which is great. I mean, we all need that. We need them to be successful. I, in particular, do. We all have our retirement plans, our 401k, have a variety of for-profit businesses that are in there to generate revenue so that we can retire. And so it's a critical aspect for that. We are a not-for-profit model, a cooperative financial institution. So it's a fundamentally different piece. When you look from the outside, it looks very similar, but if you look from the inside and get into the inside, you notice the fundamental changes. When, for example, when I was in banking and said as the secretary to the board of directors of our unit bank, we concentrated on the financial performance of the institution, and that was the predominant driver of all of the agenda of the meeting: financial performance, how we had done, how we were doing, how we did in accordance to projection, how that was affecting stock price, and what the market expectations were for us. In my first board meeting at the credit union, when I was the EVP and participating in the board meeting, the credit union was financially very strong. We spent about 10 minutes of a 2-hour board meeting talking about the financial statements, because it was doing well, so it wasn't the driving focus of the board meeting. The rest of the time was really spent talking about, in that particular case, what the school district was doing, because that was what consisted of, I should say, the membership of the credit union. So the performance of the school district, its funding, how that was affecting the employees and where contracts were, and those types of things were the fundamental things that we talked about. And then we talked a lot about what was happening on the state level for credit unions, and who was doing new and different things, and whether we should be looking at some of those things. And I think for me, hopefully the rest of the board and staff that was in there was very concentrated in the conversation, because I'm sure I sat there mostly just with a dazed look and a dropped jaw, because it was just so different. So for me, so markedly different with that.
So a real difference in the focus of a bank that has investors, stockholders, and customers, and a credit union that's a cooperative that's owned by the members.
Right, and so the members...
And a different mission.
And it's a different mission, and the members consist of all of the groups that you talked about. They are the owners, they are the stockholders, and they are the customers. Mm-hmm. And so you can't neglect one aspect of that for the other aspect, because they're intertwined. And the mission for the bank was to generate revenue for the stockholders, a fine model, mm-hmm. and very good at that. The mission for the credit union is to help people. We talk about that all the time. Intrinsic, it's not just a catchphrase, it's a way of life. of people helping people. That's what we do. The institution of the credit union perpetuates itself by how well it does at taking care of its people.
And so that's why the difference between a bank and a credit union is important to the consumer and how it benefits the member as a
Absolutely.
consumer of financial services.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you, as a consumer of financial services, and if you comparatively from a financial perspective of that differential, it's about, in our analysis, $157 a year per member of financial benefit of belonging to a credit union. And that's calculated by the difference in the rates that the credit union pays to its membership for its deposits that they make. It's a differential and a lower rate overall that credit union members pay on their loans. And there's a difference in the amount of fees that you pay for the services that you receive. Now, in today's market, it's hard to see the differential in rates because rates are very compressed, they're very low, and it's not a large shift from institution to institution of any type on a savings market. But as rates go up, that amount of savings will become greater as there's an opportunity to price differently.
So credit unions have been around for a long time. Here in Minnesota, the first credit union was chartered in 1925. Today it's Firefly Credit Union.
Correct.
Back in its original form, it was Minneapolis Postal Employees. How many credit unions and how many credit union members are here in Minnesota?
You know, there's 120 credit unions that are chartered as Minnesota-based credit unions. And of those 120, there's over 400 locations throughout the state through the branching network that they have. And then that equates to 1.7 million Minnesotans are members of credit unions and participants in the cooperative financial system through credit unions. And about a little over 21 billion in assets are entrusted to credit unions to manage for the benefit of their membership.
And the credit unions here in Minnesota and nationally are continuing to grow their membership and to grow their assets and their financial base.
That's true, and it's as you said, it's a mature model, and so the more importantly, I think, than the number of institutions is the number of offices and branches that are available for the convenience of the consumer to utilize that. In the United States, right, overall, there's over 6,000 credit unions. There's 107 million citizens of the United States are members of credit unions.
We talked about the convenience of branches.
Mm-hmm.
I know here in Minnesota, it's a national network, but here in Minnesota, there's something called the Shared Branching Network,
yes,
for credit unions, unique to credit unions,
it
in
is.
fact. Could you tell us a little bit about what that is and how it works?
You bet. And there's probably nothing that demonstrates the cooperative business model more so than shared branching. In shared branching, the credit unions that choose to participate in shared branching offer this service to their members. And they may offer it by allowing other members to come to them, but predominantly by allowing their members to go to other participating credit unions across the country to utilize the shared or the branch facilities, predominantly on the consumer depository arena for deposits, withdrawals, but checking and buying, all of those types of facilities. So there's over 5,000 branches of credit unions that are involved in shared branching. If you look at that from a national perspective, then that's the fourth largest branch system in financial banks or credit unions combined. And it's done for the benefit of the member, not for the benefit of the institution to gain more members, but for the convenience and benefit for members. In a state like Minnesota, that as our members do well and are good stewards of their funds, if they retire, they move away, or they become snowbirds, if they have that opportunity, then those states, Florida and Arizona as examples, are strong shared branching networks. They can retain their membership in Minnesota, use the facilities in other states as if they were in case Firefly Credit Union, and get those services.
That's a really unique feature that credit unions have that other financial institutions don't.
Right. And if I can, one of the base parts of that is that it's not about, you go in and you're a member of Firefly, you're not a predator towards becoming a member of the institution that you just came into. It's prohibited from doing that. to get more participation and allow the consumer to make the decision of where they want to do their financial services.
That's a great unique aspect of credit unions. And here in Minnesota and in other states I know, but Minnesota started this a year or so ago. We have a unique program here called Wincentive.
Correct.
Could you tell us a little bit about how that program got started and what it does and some of the successes that it's had?
Absolutely. So in the 2015 legislative session, we were able to sponsor and pass a bill called prize-linked savings, which is really exactly what it is. It's an incentivized savings program, predominantly to encourage people who don't save to become savers. And when you look at, especially in today's interest rate environment, the return on a basic savings account is very small, especially if it's very small money that's on deposit. And a lot of people view their savings, if you will, as buying a lottery ticket in hopes that you win the lottery. And we all know the odds of winning in the lottery are very small. The reward of winning is very large, but the odds of actually achieving that reward are infinitesimally small. This product, which we branded as Wincentive Savings, is designed to encourage non-savers to begin to save money. And the way that the product works is that the credit unions that participate, and there were 14 that participated in 2016, which was the first year of implementation, so it started at 0. There are 5 more credit unions in Minnesota that came on into the program in January of this year, so we're just under 20 participating institutions. I'm talking to another one next week about participating as well. But in 2016, then starting at 0 in January to the end of the year, we had over $3 million that were deposited into accounts for the Wincentive Savings program.
That's amazing.
It is. And the average balance in that is about $300. And so from that evidence, it would appear that we're achieving what we principally went after, which is to encourage non-savers to become savers.
People who've never saved before
Exactly.
now have an incentive to participate.
Right. And the way the program works is for each $25 that is an incremental increase in balance in the account, that's over a month's period of time. For each one of those $25 increments, up to 4 increments or 4 entries into the raffle. So a $25 deposit is an entry up to $100 of deposit. Of course, we encourage people to save more, but there has to be limitations on how the program works. So you would get four in essence, raffle opportunities, and there'd be a monthly drawing, and depending on how the participating credit union may do a drawing just for their members, or otherwise it's part of the statewide drawing. There's a monthly, a quarterly, semi-annual, and annual drawings for this. Right. So out of $3 million that was saved, there were $80,000 in prizes that were, and when I say prizes, it's cash.
$80,000 in
right.
cash prizes awarded to these members of credit unions that saved the $3 million in 2016.
That's correct. And it's a tremendous success.
A great success.
And for the participating credit unions, another thing that's about the cooperative model is this is not a product that's going to generate profit to the institution. You know, to spend $80,000 in interest or dividends paid for $3 million of deposits so that's an average of only $1.5 million for a year, is not a reward to the institution. And that's part of our mission. This part goes back to the people helping people part. Our mission is not to generate profitability for credit. We have to do that for the perpetuation of the institution. The mission is to help people. And in this case, we're reaching out to help people to become better stewards of their financial future, which builds a stronger state for all of us to live in.
Let's pick up on that point and talk a little bit more about it. You know, we hear so much about financial literacy, financial education, and the need for more of that in our schools and in our communities. And I know credit unions are very much engaged in that,
Absolutely.
Committed to it. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the things that credit unions here in Minnesota have going in the area of financial education and financial literacy?
Absolutely, it'd be my pleasure. And there's just a broad spectrum of what that is. We have credit unions that could start at just offering financial tools on their websites to help people learn more about savings, learn more about retirement, how they're achieving their goals, setting goals for retirement, and starting from that perspective. We have a lot of credit unions that offer classes at their institutions to encourage people to come in from a collective perspective, to work together to do those very similar kinds of things. How do I deal with troubled debt? How do I work with an institution to be honest about where I am with my finances, and how I, rather than go down an avenue of bankruptcy and ruin, how do I work through this situation for a better outcome for me and a better outcome for the institution? But it's based on how do I work with the individual to accomplish that? To credit unions that are involved in schools. Involved in schools in a number of different ways. Some do classroom presentations to the schools. Some are actively teaching financial education classes in the district. Some have, and this is relatively new for credit unions, actually have branches of the credit union in the school, run by the students, usually through an FBLA or a DECA sponsorship in the schools, that are open and available to the students. And it's been remarkable to see that. The first branch that was opened was at Owatonna High School.
Right.
And that was a few years ago that happened. There's a number in the Twin Cities. Firefly is a participant.
We have one
and
in the
that just
Burnsville
opened
High School.
a branch at Burnsville High School. A great facility there, a wonderful addition to the financial education, the overall education of the students there. Interestingly, we have two different student branches that are in the Cook Area School District up there. One is in where you have over 3,000 students, I think, at Burnsville High School. Mm-hmm. They have a student branch in a K-12 school building with the total students in just a few hundred in that. And what that does, and as a person who've had the opportunity to witness some of this, I'm just blown away by how comfortable the students become. I'm not talking about financial products, talking about financial education and the need to understand the impacts of poor financial decisions have that you don't think about as a young person. And even more so, it's just watching the students talk to other students in a classroom setting about this kind of topic, which when I was in high school, you never would have seen me in front of the classroom to talk about that. I grew up in a time where we didn't talk about, that was a prohibited subject at our dinner table. We did not talk about finances and how much money our parents made or what their bills were taboo subjects.
Well, it's great to see credit unions' involvement in the communities and in the schools and helping take the consumer, the student, beyond just how to use a debit card or how to use a credit card, but understanding the full spectrum of consumer finances and how to manage them. We've been talking about credit unions.
Correct.
But let's spend the last few minutes talking about the Minnesota Credit Union Network. Sure. You're the president CEO of the Minnesota Credit Union Network, which is the trade association of credit unions here in Minnesota.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about that trade association. What's the mission and how do you go about accomplishing that?
Well, our mission, we're the business trade association for credit unions, just as you said. Our mission is to ensure the success, growth, and vitality of Minnesota credit unions. And so we do that by being the advocates for credit unions, for their staffs, and for the members of credit unions in a wide variety of ways. And we do that in political advocacy for working with people who want to be elected into office and helping to educate them about our business. We work of legislative advocacy by working with those elected officials to learn more about the credit union industry, to work with them to understand the legislation that they're supporting or opposing, how that would affect credit unions. Mm-hmm. We advocate with regulatory agencies. We are in a highly regulated industry, and that's important for people to understand that we operate in an industry that very similar to banking, that has deposit insurance, very safe institutions. The insurance of credit unions very similar to FDIC, that's controlled by the National Credit Union Administration. Right. But we advocate then to, as laws are passed, They usually are turned over to an agency to write the rules to implement the laws. We work with the agencies, on that. We turn around, we work with the credit unions to understand and comply with the new rules as they happen. But we also work within our industry and with the participants in that to be better stewards of the credit union movement, to understand the differences that we talked about, and as people become participants in it from an employment perspective, what we are as financial cooperatives, how that is different, how that is special, and how what they do is an important part. So we help to build communities of learning within the credit union industry to help people interact with each other, work with peers, learn best practices to perpetuate their industry. And our industry is very unique in that our board members are volunteers. For that, by and large, there's some stipends with some in terms of their participating in the actual meetings. But we provide education to directors to help them be better stewards of their credit union as well.
Sounds like a big job.
It's the funnest, most rewarding job I've ever had. It's a different challenge every day, and sometimes often multiple times during the day. But it's not I don't really view it as work. I enjoy what I do so much that people ask what I do, and I don't talk about it in a work environment. I'm always puzzled now by people back to the grind on a Monday. Well, to me, frankly, it's an opportunity to do what I enjoy doing.
Well, as we start to wrap up our session this afternoon, Mark, any specific takeaways that you'd like to have our audience make sure they remember from our discussion?
Yeah, when I talked about looking at the industry from the inside out, there's also the outside in perspective as well. And we tend to use a lot of vernacular, and probably have today unconsciously, about that of member and joining. And when you look from the outside in, sometimes from the inside out, we look at this beautiful thing that we've created, and we want you to be a participant. When you look from the outside in, you see more of the castle and the walls and the moat and the barriers to participating. And that's going to be a challenge for us, is to remove those barriers, for you to be more transparent to people to participate. But I think the takeaways for me would be, credit unions are safe. They are local. Decisions are made locally by the membership of the credit union. It's a democracy. It's controlled by the members. As a member of credit union, you vote for the board of directors that institute the policies that provide the services to you. And it's incredibly convenient. Through the huge ATM, service charge-free ATM network that we didn't really talk about very much at all, the shared branching network that we do, the technology. Members want technology. We strive to provide that for the mobile devices, the variety of access points to credit unions. If credit unions offer all of those services in a variety of different ways. And for anyone that gets a chance to see the show, for the audience, you all can belong to a credit union. We can help you find a credit union that fits your needs.
And how do they do that?
Go to our website at mnclan.org. There's also a finder called thesmarterchoice.org.
Great. Mark, thank
my
you.
pleasure.
Mark
Thank you for
Cummins,
the
our guest
opportunity.
on Access to Democracy.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Wow. Did it?
Yes. We got 99 more minutes to go.
Yeah,
Bill.
let's do it.